just fine.
Shortly after graduating high school, my mom walked into my room and said, "Get out of my apartment." The good news was I was now homeless. I stayed with my grandmother for a few months. Eventually, I landed my own little apartment. A single room about the size of a large walk-in closet, communal kitchen and bathroom, scuzzy neighbors. It was a dump. A few years later, an efficiency apartment opened up. For an extra $100 a month, I got my own little kitchen, 4 tall windows, and a tiny little bathroom with a standing shower. It was so small that you had to turn sideways to sit on the toilet. I loved that apartment. But as the distractions faded, I realized I had been stuffing down and ignoring the abandonment issues, and they came back hard. I was sleeping late, I stopped making music, I stopped making art, and I stopped caring. I wasn't angry, I was just detached. I went to work because I had to. I had girlfriends because everybody has needs, but really, I just wanted to be alone. I couldn't get hurt if I didn't leave my apartment. When I was going through that months-long spell of depression and agoraphobia, I decided to try Silent Hill 4 for the first time, and oh boy, you ever play a game at just the right time? Yeah. But this isn't just a video about my feelings. There are many more things in Silent Hill 4 that make it what it is. With that, let's talk about the final game from Team Silent. Be warned, full story spoilers ahead.
What a story, Mark.
Okay, so buckle up because there is a lot of crazy stuff in this game, and much of it is debated fervently and has been for many years. So I'm not saying that this is the definitive truth. These are just my thoughts, okay? Also, if you could click the like button real quick, I would be very grateful. It tells YouTube that someone cares. Thank you for that. Starting out, we play as someone waking up in an apartment. If you're familiar with Silent Hill, you'd instantly recognize the infamous Otherworld infecting this place. A world of blood and rust. It's unmistakable. There are many theories about what the Otherworld really is. I went down that rabbit hole for my Silent Hill 2 review, and I've gone again for this. To be fair, everyone is kind of right in their own way. The series has been changed, warped, retconned, and reformed across so many games and so many mediums that you'd be forgiven for not truly understanding what this stuff really means. I'm not sure if we're even supposed to know, or if anyone outside of the original team really does. It's part of the mystique and the charm of these games. But for general purpose discussion, the Otherworld can be viewed as an extension of your own mind, a place where most people seem to be punished by their own guilt, fear, rage, and transgressions. Like an alternate dimension, basically. And it's commonly thought that the power of this Otherworld is facilitated to an extent by the town of Silent Hill. In Silent Hill 2, for instance, the other world that James Sunderland experiences is essentially his own private hell. He's stalked by monsters that represent his sins as well as repressed issues. Pyramid Head is the ultimate manifestation, as it represents his guilty conscience trying to force him to confront the fact that he did what he did in Lakeview Hotel. He's not a generic slasher villain with big muscles like some slop would have you believe. Through his journey, James interacts with other people like Angela Orozco and Eddie Dombrowski, also called to the town of Silent Hill to be punished inside of their own purgatory, their own otherworld. But in Brookhaven Hospital, a doctor's note describes a patient that seems to be quite happy in their alternate dimension, their otherworld, so it can be inferred that it's not an entirely bad thing either. But in general, when you see the blood and rust, you know you're in trouble. So what happens when you're not being put through the trials of the otherworld for your own sins? What if you're just a helpless victim of someone else's tragic story? This is where Silent Hill 4 comes in. In the intro segment, we're playing as Joseph Schreiber, the original tenant in this apartment, room 302. He can't open the windows, he questions what's happened to his place, and then he spots a picture of a strange man hanging up in the living room. Interestingly, this is the ghost of Jimmy Stone. Oh? Alright, so it gets kind of complex. There's a cult in Silent Hill known as the Order. They have different branches: Valtiel, Mother, the Yellow God, the Red God, Asante Sana Squash Banana, on and on. This isn't meant to be a video on the entire lore of the series, but if you've played Silent Hill 2, you've seen Jimmy Stone's inspiration before. Do you remember this super creepy, oldie-time picture from the Silent Hill Historical Society, the Crimson and White Banquet for the Gods? The guy in the red hood there? Yeah, that's what Jimmy Stone modeled his executioner outfit on when he was carrying out executions for the Order, specifically the Valtiel sect. Some people think that James Sunderland saw this picture on vacation with his wife, Mary, and this is how his mind came up with Pyramid Head as a punisher. Jimmy Stone's nickname was the Red Devil, and this is directly referenced in Silent Hill 2 when James finds news clippings amongst the garbage at Woodside Apartments, in which two of Walter Sullivan's murders are referenced, with Sullivan shouting that he didn't do it. Then he mentions punishment and the Red Devil. Some people have said that this photo is of Jimmy Stone and George Roston, but the photo dates way back before the time when Jimmy and George would have been around, which is why I say took inspiration from. I mentioned George Roston, another priest of the Order, and he also played a very large part in Walter Sullivan becoming who he became. But for now, this is the ghost of Jimmy Stone, known as Victim Number 1. He's also on the NTSC cover, kinda cool. Alright, so if we're spending this much time on the first 5 minutes of the game, the well must run deep, and it does. But you know, I'm just trying to establish some of these characters up front. After this prologue segment, the intro movie plays, and then we take control of the protagonist of Silent Hill 4, Henry Townsend. Henry wakes up in room 302. He can't use his phone to dial out, but he does receive a freaky call from a woman asking for help. This as he realizes the cord to his phone is cut. So, the spooky stuff gets as ludicrous as you'd expect, but there's more of that later. Let's talk about my favorite aspect of Silent Hill 4, Henry's apartment, the titular room. Look, I know, there's a game with a ghost killing in the name of a cult to reunite with his apartment room mother, but I can never get enough of this boring apartment. His desk has a few books, a lamp, a pencil holder with a ruler, and some pictures. His bathroom is even less notable. No art, one gray bath mat, a gray robe, and various hygiene products. Despite its bland presentation, the living room and kitchen is burned into my mind forever. Pale yellow cabinets, a plain kettle, a toaster, coffee maker, an old CRT TV, a stereo system, and a little cream-colored love seat and chair set. The thing that sticks out about Henry's apartment is that it's remarkably unremarkable. Also, if it wasn't obvious, you're playing from the first-person perspective. This may seem quaint with the dozens and dozens of first-person horror games around nowadays, but this was new and exciting for 2004. PT, the legendary demo from 2014, very much did its own thing, but I always got big Silent Hill 4 vibes from it, and I mean that in the best way. First-person horror while seemingly imprisoned in a plain environment with increasingly worse landscapes and hauntings, the radio broadcasts, and a gross dead thing still writhing and making noises in PT the Fetus and Silent Hill 4 the Cat in the Fridge. The hole in the bathroom of PT, though much smaller, also feels like a direct homage. And the bloody bathtub in Silent Hill 4 definitely feels like something Kojima borrowed for his demo. It's what I've always loved about PT. It felt like the Room 302 concept with a beefy engine behind it. The vibes of the apartment really hit hard in the late afternoon, early evening. The lamps with the soft white light are on, illuminating the lightly decaying quotidian prison. The amount of hours I've lived in places like this across my life is nearly incalculable. But you do get another Silent Hill 2 connection when Henry mentions the name Frank Sunderland, the superintendent here at the apartment complex, which we find out is called South Ashfield Heights. So, I've read over the years that some people consider Frank's inclusion simple fan service and a forced attempt to connect this game to Part 2. With all due respect, what? Frank's inclusion here is great. Firstly, Silent Hill 1, 2, 3, and 4 were made basically one right after another in a 5-year period. 4 games in that short period of time by a small team is nearly unfathomable and a testament to the sheer work ethic of Team Silent, although sadly it did cause them to eventually flame out. But the point is, the Frank Sunderland stuff here isn't an empty attempt years after the fact by a different team to get a cheap pop from longtime fans, which is unfortunately what a lot of Silent Hill became for a long time. I mean, Pyramid Head and Homecoming, just stop. Frank also plays a major role in the story, but more on that later. As simple as it is, looking out the window is another major feature for me personally. I told you my apartment story. Playing this game during that time gave me pause, truly. It made me reflect on what I was doing with my life, or rather, what I wasn't doing. Regardless, I love looking out of this window. I've never had such a feeling of loneliness, longing, seclusion, and comfort in a simple video game look around. Restaurant Fuseli, Hotel South Ashfield, cars driving by, people walking around, and across the courtyard, your neighbors. Parents and their kids, a guy in a shirt and tie, a lady looking on like Henry is. Then the camera pans in on Cynthia Velasquez, one of Henry's neighbors. She's standing at the top of a stairwell that leads into the subway system. She seems hesitant, checking her watch, taking steps, stretching. Though that could just be down to the team wanting to give the player time to notice her. But as neat as all of this is, the room is suffocating. You can bang on the window, but nobody can hear you. Henry can't pry the windows open, and as you'll learn, the front door is out of the question. Throughout the game, Henry can see people through the peephole in his door. He'll scream, he'll hit the door, and nobody will hear his cries for help. Henry is a prisoner, trapped in his apartment. I've read that several people have played the room for the first time during COVID lockdowns, and yeah, that tracks. So we have to figure a way out, and thus begins the puzzle gameplay. Many people have lamented the loss of riddle difficulty options, and I suppose it would have been a nice challenge for more hardcore players, but I've also heard that Silent Hill 4 was rushed, and implementing multiple puzzle difficulties probably didn't fit into the time budget. That's pure speculation, but the second half of the game is also a big clue. Either way, you can see a phone number on a big sign above the bar. I love organic things like this in the game. Sure, it's maybe one step up from the usual password on the dry erase board riddle like most games have, but it's something I remember seeing as I was just looking around and thinking, I wonder if that'll work. And oh, it does. Holy shit, he said buffalo wings are half off on Tuesdays. Alright, so that wasn't much of a solution, but it cleverly teaches the player to look around the environment carefully. Speaking of, Henry finds a scrap of paper behind his bookshelf. It discusses the ritual of the Holy Assumption and how a different world was constructed as a result of this ritual. Okay, so I'm going to try to simplify the spooky, cryptic language in the game as best I can. This note is hinting at how, through this ritual, one can create their own otherworld and how a spirit can then haunt it. And if the person that does this, that created this place, has too heavy a mental burden, the otherworld will be awful and hellish. This is essentially what Walter Sullivan, the game's primary antagonist, did and is currently doing. In simple terms, Walter used the ritual of the Holy Assumption to take control of his own otherworld. His mind is totally messed up, as he was a serial killer, so this otherworld is a nightmare. Holy Assumption involves sacrificing 11 people, which was his notorious killing spree. The ultimate goal is to complete the 21 sacraments, or kill 21 people total, to summon what Silent Hill's cult, known as the Order, calls paradise, which is basically hell on earth. Though it should be noted, Walter simply thought that the ritual would reunite him with his mother. Don't get confused, I'm gonna explain it. The first 11 victims got Walter the otherworld. The last 10 victims are specifically chosen people that are said to represent things like chaos and temptation and so forth. Completing all of this completes the ritual and brings paradise. If you've played Silent Hill 1 or especially Silent Hill 3, some of this might sound really familiar. We'll go more into why Walter does this, and it ties directly into what makes the room so sad and complicated. But for now, you're just plain old Henry, and you're an unwitting participant. That's when we discover the door. Henry mentions that this door popped up 5 days ago and he can't escape. This image is iconic. You've probably seen it a dozen times and might not have even known what it was from, but if you know, you know. There's a warning that says "Don't go out," written by Walter. The fact that it was written from inside is super spooky and intriguing. Walter's goal is to keep you inside this place, obviously, but why? Henry plays a major part in the completion of the 21 sacraments, and Walter doesn't want Henry running around ruining the plan. Here we get our first look at another major character, Eileen Galvin, your next door neighbor. We'll talk a lot more about her later, but for now, she's just a pretty lady that wants to prepare for a party. But look behind her. We also get a look at the bloody handprints on the wall. This is the kind of world building that makes me love Silent Hill 4. I discussed the 21 sacraments and Walter Sullivan's killing spree. What do you think these handprints represent? It's pretty cool, right? It's just such a creepy little detail, especially when you note that these are dried up and brown. Pay attention when new, fresh handprints start to show up. It's such an eerie little touch, especially as Henry is the only one that seems to notice them. We then find a note that says, "Mom, why don't you wake up?" Now, I'm not going to go over every single note in the game, but this one is important because it ties directly into why Walter is trying to perform the 21 sacraments. More on that in just a bit, but I just want you to keep in mind, Walter has mommy issues. Don't we all, Walt? Ugh. Holes have always been a big part of Silent Hill, and that is never more apparent than in Part 4. a hole suddenly forms in Henry's bathroom. You can hear noises coming from beyond, and you get your first weapon of the game here, the steel pipe, a classic Silent Hill staple. So we crawl through this extremely narrow opening, and when Henry awakes, he's riding down an escalator into the subway world. I like Henry's gait animation, the confident, antisocial, autistic swagger of an introvert, a man after my own heart. Here we meet Cynthia, the lady that we saw out of our window earlier. She's convinced that she's in a dream. Now, she's not quite wrong. Later in the game, you can actually spot one of your neighbors fast asleep in bed while he's running around the other world. So, Cynthia's relaxed about everything, even offering to do a special favor for Henry if he helps her. After all, it's just a dream. Henry, like any one of us would do, and don't you dare lie, immediately agrees. But he's not a creep. Cynthia feels sick and heads into the bathroom. Henry, the gentleman, patiently waits outside for her, and now we get our first taste of combat in Silent Hill 4. The sniffer dogs pop out, and it's time to go. Melee combat is definitely the focus in this game. There are 2 firearms, but the developers deliberately wanted to scale back the gun stuff from Silent Hill 3 and have the player focus on scrapping to survive. In a 2005 interview with Game Developer Magazine, composer Akira Yamaoka and producer Akihiro Imamura discussed Silent Hill 4 post-mortem. I've linked the interview in the description below. It's very fascinating how forthcoming these two are about the flaws of their game. That kind of honesty is a dying art. But the developers discussed that they initially restricted ammunition a lot more until they realized that playtesters were basically hoarding every bullet for the final boss, and thus most players weren't using guns at all, so the team sprinkled in a lot more ammunition around. But I hate to say it, the pistol is piss weak, and it sounds like a kid's cap gun. Honestly, it sounds weaker than a cap gun. More like crap gun, am I right? Anyway, I kinda used it a lot at one point late in the game because I was kind of annoyed at Eileen, but other than that, the pistol in Silent Hill 4 kinda stinks. Skipping ahead a little bit, one of the apartments you come across has a tenant that's a big gun nut, but these are all models, you can't use them. I kinda love the slight bit of trolling from Team Silent, like they're saying, look, we could make guns galore like any other video game, but that's not what this is about. You do get Richard Braintree's revolver in room 207, but frankly, I only used this for the very last boss fight. I just didn't feel the need to otherwise. The regular pistol has one more function in the form of silver bullets that knock down ghosts for a while, but there are only a few of these bullets in the whole game, and there's only one ghost where I used it, and it is awesome in that instant, but make no mistake, this is a melee game at heart. So I can't stand here and say that the combat is necessarily great, because hand-to-hand combat in Silent Hill has always been kind of, ass, but it is improved. It's not good, let's get that straight. There are a few too many enemies, some of them are plain stupid like flying bugs and slugs, and in close quarters it gets kinda tedious. But once I got used to the combat, I didn't have any problems battering enemies. I mapped evade to my spacebar, and it was pretty easy to bob and weave once you get used to it. It doesn't elevate this game to like Devil May Cry or anything, but I like the dodge move. There's a little circular meter next to your health bar where you can build up a power attack by holding the button down. It is pretty awesome to save up a big swing and beat the brakes off an enemy, but it's not something I relied on frequently. You do have other weapons too. You get a baseball bat and a rusty axe, the latter of which I used most throughout, as well as breakable weapons like a wine bottle from your refrigerator or some golf clubs scattered around occasionally. Insert clever Joel reference here. Of course, I'd rather insert a joke about talented people like Amy Hennig being muscled out, but never mind. These temporary weapons are cool, but the problem is they take up inventory space, and the inventory system in this game kinda sucks. I know, it's survival horror. I still have my original copy of Resident Evil from 1996. Trust me, I know. But this one stinks, and here's why. You can carry 10 bullets, okay? That takes up one of your limited inventory slots. If you grabbed another 10 bullets, instead of combining to make 20 in one slot, those 10 take up a separate slot. The same goes for healing items. It feels unnecessarily restrictive, and it's just kind of annoying, frankly. To add insult, when you use the storage trunk in room 302, the bullets do compound in 10s. It's just strange. Thankfully, you can travel back and forth between the other world and your apartment fairly easily. Finding a new portal with a halo of the sun around it is really exciting. It's like a Dark Souls bonfire, just sweet relief. And it's quite thematically relevant when discussing aspects of agoraphobia and being a recluse. When you go back to room 302, you regenerate health. A pro tip, don't use any healing items until later in the game. If you stink and get a whipping, run back to your place and lick your wounds. You're back in the safety of your own company. It's safe here. Healing. Literally. I love going back. Not only do you replenish lost health, but there's almost always a new story wrinkle, a new red note under the door, a conversation through the peephole, etc. Or in this case, peeping through this wall on your neighbor Eileen. See, Henry found this hole behind some furniture. It's where you got your handgun. The last tenant, Joseph Schreiber, tried to dig his way out of the room. He got this far and couldn't progress. If you read the note carved into the wall, Joseph says that the faint hope that he had turned to despair when he realized that he's not simply stuck in the apartment, but that this apartment may be in another dimension altogether. How right you are, Joey. You could say this has shades of voyeurism, and that's definitely fair, but it never gets super weird. Eileen will stretch and sweep up and stuff like that, but there's nothing raunchy or too weird. Oh, but you do see an old familiar face. Fans of the series will recognize Robbie the Rabbit, Lakeside Amusement Park's mascot in Silent Hill 3. Of course, Robbie serves as a good bit of fan service, but it also indicates that Eileen has been to Silent Hill, and it gets freakier later on. When Eileen is attacked and taken away to St. Jerome's Hospital, Henry can look through this hole again. He's listening to two cops discussing what happened, how this is the third round of what they suspect is another Walter Sullivan copycat. As you listen, notice that Robbie the Rabbit is now turned and pointing right at you, clearly Walter Sullivan's work, and he's taunting you. There are some other not-so-subtle indicators that Walter is watching Henry, as if he's savoring him. It's clever storytelling, and it's rewarding for patient players that take the time to discover this stuff. Okay, but for now, Cynthia calls Henry from the subway world, crying out for help. We have to go back. Upon passing through the hole, there's a spooky mannequin holding a subway token just for us. This is the kind of stuff that Silent Hill always did so well, and there's way more of it to come. But these bizarre things that don't have a rational explanation, like why is this here? Yes, it signifies that Cynthia is being harmed, but who put it here? Did Walter craft it with his weird otherworld powers? Oh, also, there's a giant throbbing organ in the subway that most likely represents an umbilical cord. Pretty gross. Anyway, I've always loved the off-putting props and strange, suggestive environmental details in these games. What I really don't love about Silent Hill 4 are the ghosts. Ghosts are a weird entity in horror. They can either be terrifying and gripping, like in 2001's Cairo or Pulse, or they can look like Mick Thompson and have a stupid name, like in 2012's Sinister. I mean, Bagul. And before you correct me, ghost, demon, I don't really care. I just wanted to trash that dumb character. Anyway, so ghosts can be really freaky when they're done right, and they're a very big part of Japanese culture, specifically with scary media. That and bathrooms. No, seriously. But I gotta say it, and I don't want to, because I love Silent Hill 4. This hurts me a lot more than it hurts you, game. But the ghost thing in part 4 is terrible. They come out of walls to pursue you and are unkillable. Okay, cool. A relentless tyrant enemy. A proven formula. These are supposed to be Walter Sullivan's victims too, which conceptually is awesome. But in execution, they are a pain in the butt. Ghosts aren't hard to avoid if you have some room, but getting cornered in tight spaces definitely comes with some frustration. Ghosts will drain your health if they get too close, but they also have a lock-on attack, and the amount of spacebar smashing I did, yeah. Being that they're ghosts, you can't kill them, but you can use a sword of obedience to pin them to the ground. But you only get 5 of these throughout the game, and buddy, you better have one for a certain obese ghost if you want his key. You can temporarily knock them down, but they're right back on you in a few seconds. Even the developers acknowledged that they should have increased the knockdown time another 10 seconds or so, and this is all especially annoying in the apartments. The apartment world is one of my favorite environments in the game. I wanted so badly to take my time and absorb every little detail like I did in Silent Hill 2, and the apartments in 4 are much more memorable as they're tailored after characters with names and backgrounds, all detailed in the painter's apartment. But I can't stop and smell the goddamn roses when I'm being pursued by an invulnerable specter. Now, you do have other tools to help, sort of. Saint medallions can be equipped in conjunction with weapons. Doing so wards off the damaging effects of the ghost when they get near you, but the problem is the medallions break after absorbing enough energy, and of course they take up an inventory slot, because why wouldn't they? The other major conflict with apparitions are the hauntings in your apartment. As room 302 gets sicker, the ghost of old Jimmy Stone starts making trouble. Your windows will rattle, your television will crackle with static. You'll even see bloody footprints as this dickhead spirit traipses across your kitchen floor. You have to light holy candles in your place to ward them off. Oh, and doing so contributes to your ending, by the way. I had the second best ending, we'll talk about it, but I would have had the best ending if I had used more candles in the apartment. Oh, by the way, if you come across the spirit of a notorious serial killer and he, let's say, offers you the Shabby doll, and you want to put that in your inventory in apartment 302, hypothetically, you might want to reconsider that. I may or may not have done that. But really, it's not just the ghosts in this game that were kind of disappointing. Some of the more traditional monsters in Silent Hill 4 just aren't that good. Some are, let's be clear. Some enemies are great. Do you want to run down the list? Of course you do. Okay, be warned, I have to front load this with the negative stuff, okay? We already discussed the sniffer dogs. I mean, there's a bit of symbolism there insofar as Walter was nearly attacked by a dog in a pet store, and the long tongue could be thought of as sort of an umbilical cord, something this game has a lot of, but in the end, it's a dog in a horror game. Been there, done that, and it doesn't do anything unique or surprising. I thought the groaner from Silent Hill 1, for instance, was more interesting. The Wall Man is, as the name implies, a man in a wall, and no, it's not Roger Waters. Basically, it's a creature that emerges from around the escalator and swipes at you. It also makes an appearance in a late-game apartment, and it's okay, I guess, but that's it. It's just a guy in a wall. This concept does expand with one of the bosses in the game, but we gotta work towards that. Then there are the moth bats. For a series that gave us enemies like the Mandarin and the Night Flutter, this is just plain fucking stupid. After 3 classic games in a row, we get this dumb garbage. These things just serve to annoy you more than threaten you. I mean, really, they just pester the player and do chip damage. So if that made you piss your pants, prepare for the terrifying tremor slugs. They're just slugs that stick to walls. Then they fall down and they might hurt you a little bit. I mean, Jesus, dude. I don't care about the symbolism. They drain resources, they leech. People are leeches. Walter is angry about it. It doesn't matter. They're boring and non-threatening. Same thing with the toadstools. They're just weird floor snake fungus things that you have to bop over the head to get out of your way. Again, it's more of a nuisance than a threat. I'm sure because they're long and slimy, there's yet another symbolic umbilical cord reference, but come on. You know something though? I'd rather fight toadstools all day than, I can barely even say it, haunted wheelchairs. So I have to confess, before I finished my first playthrough of Silent Hill 4 many years ago, I read about these haunted wheelchairs on a Silent Hill forum, and I thought, they must be missing something. Surely the people complaining are missing what makes the wheelchairs scary. This was before I had gotten to the hospital world myself. Then I got to the hospital world myself, and yep, these things are quite possibly the dumbest thing I've ever seen in a video game. And I beat Batman Rise of Sin Tzu. Let that sink in, mister. Seriously though, it's just a wheelchair asset programmed to spin around and kind of attack Henry. You know what, just go all the way. Throw in haunted rollerblades and lacrosse sticks and shit, why not? So look, I told you, I had to front load the negative stuff because I just wanted to get it out of the way. But I tell you what, Silent Hill 4 also has some excellent enemies. The Twin Victim is one of the greatest monster designs in the history of this franchise. Admittedly, they're easy to defeat, but Silent Hill games have never been especially difficult, so that's okay. When you come out of a room and this thing points directly at you and whispers, "Receiver," it gives me a little chill, to be honest, and it's because of the symbolism, and this really matters. So, this is Walter Sullivan's otherworld, right? So, he's projecting his mind's inner demons out to us. If you played Silent Hill 2, you probably remember the news clipping in the garbage about Billy and Miriam Locane. It was also a trivia question in the creepy elevator game show Trick or Treat as well. Billy and Miriam were twins. Children twins that Walter murdered. So they were reincarnated in his other world as the Twin Victim, hence the name. This is a proper Silent Hill enemy design and it's really well done. As are the Gumheads, aka Rubberface. Yeah, the names are kind of stupid. These things are weird and confusing, and again, proper Silent Hill design. The rotting, gray skin, the creepy monkey noises with the second head or tumor or whatever is growing out of it. They're simple, blathering, dumb beasts, which I imagine is how Walter sees most of society, in that he and I are quite alike. It is funny and ridiculous when you encounter a group of gumheads packing golf clubs and shit, like they want to tell me I'm in the wrong neighborhood and to check my socks and see if I'm down or something. It's still a good design though. When you wake up in St. Jerome's Hospital, hold on, time out, real quick. Yes, this is St. Jerome's Hospital referenced in Silent Hill 2. Rachel the nurse in Silent Hill 4 is the same Rachel the nurse that treated poor Mary Sunderland before she got shipped off to Brookhaven Hospital. I know that one Rachel is spelled like this and that one is spelled like this. It's a simple translation error. Stop thinking too hard about it. They're the same person. Sorry, I've just seen people debate this online and it's just so obvious that they're the same person. So anyway, you wake up in St. Jerome's and you see Walter maiming a woman's body with his bare hands. If you look closely, you can get some really disturbing images, and the symbolism here is striking. The overarching mother themes throughout this game lends itself to some uncomfortable, nasty interpretations of this scene, depending on how far you want your mind to take you. This becomes the patient enemy, and man, when you go back into that room and see this gigantic thing lurching towards you with a weapon, it's pretty intense at first. They go from what appears to be a normal-looking lady, albeit not a living one, to a towering Frankenstein's monster thing. They have a couple of female parts, you know what I'm talking about, and they make a female sound when you stomp them, but they're grotesque and they look cobbled together with other bits. Then they belch. Yeah, they belch. It's been a joke since 2004, and it still is. It's supposed to be gas being released from a swollen corpse, which can actually happen, and in that light, this is very disturbing. But they used a burp sound effect from a 90s cartoon. It sounds like Otto from Rocket Power chugging a soda, and it completely kills the threatening look of the patient. It's still an awesome introduction and a mostly awesome design. One last creature to mention, and my footage is kind of dark, so here's a picture as well. It's called the Bottom. This is the most startling of all the monster designs in Silent Hill 4. If you're just running around, you might not see all the detail, but the picture clearly shows a humanoid figure being birthed from the bottom half of the creature. And if you look, there are two blank-faced heads on top, representing Walter's parents that he never met. This monster is Walter's darkest vision given what happened to him at birth, which we'll get more into. Suffice it to say, the symbolism is a bit on the nose, but in a good way. And when you see that bottom walking around, it's like, oh hey, cool, a neat, creepy monster. But when you look at it in detail, knowing what you know about Walter shortly after this encounter, it's kind of heart-wrenching. This is a Jun Inoue design, and it's masterful. So, all in all, the monsters in the game are 50-50. Half of them really have that old charming combination of bizarre, surrealistic, and unnerving. The other half are bugs and possessed medical equipment, so there you go. But Silent Hill 4 has never just been simply defined by the creepy crawlies. Let's continue on with the other people that Henry Townsend crosses paths with. Oh yeah, she looks fine, Henry. So, Henry walks in on Cynthia just not doing well after being attacked by Walter, with the numbers 16121 carved on her left hammer there. It turns out the 1 is actually a slash that signifies that poor Cynthia is Walter's 16th victim out of 21. Remember, if he fulfills the 21 sacraments, he thinks he's going to return to his mother. Cynthia says that she feels like she's dying, but is convinced she's still in a dream. Henry, the astute detective, realizes that no, she's really fading after leaving her vitality all over the ticket booth. He tries to comfort her, but she passes, and that's that. It's a weird scene because on one hand, it's very sad that someone was killed, obviously, but we really didn't get to know Cynthia that well, and Henry reacts kind of robotically. Yeah, I've heard the spectrum theory about Henry, and okay, that's a possibility, I guess, but honestly, this just feels like a fan theory that tries to explain away the bad writing and acting for this character. Sorry, I guess. I've known a million people on various extremes of the spectrum, aren't we all nowadays? But I think that just about every one of them would freak out a little bit if they walked in on this. Unless, of course, they were a completely detached psychopath, but I don't take Henry as that kind of person. Guys, it's okay. You can adore Silent Hill 4, and I do, and you can still think parts of it are bad. There are. And I have a soft spot for the character of Henry. I really do. But in this scene, it's just bad. But then on the other end of this, I used to listen to Room of Angel, the song that's playing over this scene, a lot. Like, a lot. I used to take a sketch pad to the university computer bank. I'd pop on YouTube and I would listen to this song, and I would sketch for hours at a time. Given what I was going through during that phase of my life, the lyrics really hit home, and I still have a few of those drawings around here somewhere. So all in all, it's a sad scene, but it's a little wonky. Back in his apartment, Henry sees the ambulance picking Cynthia up from the subway. This is when Henry realizes that, yeah, if you die in this weird dimension, you really are gone in the real world. So basically, Walter Sullivan is like handsome Freddy Krueger. And hey, is that Akira Yamaoka? Hey.
And now the news. Yesterday, Wally the Walrus, a longtime resident of the Springfield Zoo, gave birth to a healthy baby walrus pup named Buttercup.
I love the happy radio broadcast. It's too happy, and that's why it sticks out. The mother and child parallels here are obvious. As we peek out, you'll notice Frank Sunderland sweeping the hall. If you look on the wall, you'll see a new 16th handprint, freshly made. Walter's 16th victim, Cynthia, and the hits keep coming. Back in Henry's bathroom, the hole in the wall is getting bigger, but no markings have formed around it yet. Passing through, Henry wakes up in the forest world. In Silent Hill, trees and fog go together like PB&J. We find a car belonging to Jasper Geen. Yeah, Geen. Very creative, guys. But there's a really cool little detail here. This car is the exact same make and model of the car driven by James Sunderland from Silent Hill 2. It even has the same license plate number, 000TH2. So this brings up some interesting theories. If James's car was repossessed after his disappearance in 2, then we can confirm that the in-water ending isn't canon, and his fate remains ambiguous. The character Jasper Geen is obsessed with the occult, and more specifically is drawn here to this place, Walter Sullivan's other world. Did he procure this car intentionally? Does he know about James? Or more than likely it's just a reused asset because Silent Hill 4 was made in less than a year. It just happens to double as a cheeky nod to Keen fans. Yeah, we meet Jasper Geen. He rambles like every kid you went to high school with that had way too much red food dye and did the ninja run to the cafeteria. Jasper and his two friends, Bobby and Zine, came to Silent Hill 10 years prior. They were a group of buddies fascinated by the occult, and they wanted to investigate the Order out of curiosity. Walter Sullivan lured the three boys to him, strangling and removing the hearts of Bobby and Zine. Jasper, too afraid to follow his friends into the trap, ran off and wasn't aware of the fate his friends had suffered. Now he's back with courage and he wants to meet and witness the Red Devil once and for all. He gives us a hint about the orphanage and the big rock he's sitting next to, calling it the Mother Stone, a rock that supposedly lets you communicate with dead ancestors. Now, you have to remember, this is all from the mind of Walter, so this giant rock literally being a mother stone is fairly on the nose, but it's also something that likely really did exist outside of the orphanage that the Order really did revere or pray to, or whatever bullshit cults do. This is also a bit of a nod to the Native American side of the story. The idea is that the town of Silent Hill was built on native grounds. The natives dubbed Toluca Lake the place of silent spirits and respected the town's power. It's speculated that they used this power to communicate with the dead, and this was actually a good thing. The Mother Stone, Nakihona, might have actually been the sacred landmark that facilitated this communication. Still a better love story than Twilight. Hey everybody, remember that good joke? Then we see the Wish House Orphanage. This might be familiar to you if you've played Silent Hill 3. Heather finds literature discussing an orphanage, operated by the Order, on the outskirts of Silent Hill, where children were kidnapped and brainwashed, called Hope House. Wait, is it Hope House or Wish House? Yes. You see, in Japanese, these words are kind of interchangeable, so when translating, it was listed as Hope in 3, Wish in 4, kind of like Rachel and Rachel. But this is the same place. This is the orphanage, and this is where things get dark. This is where Walter Sullivan ended up as a small child, and it's where he learned of the 21 Sacraments. Now, as I said, I'm not here to do a complete breakdown of all Silent Hill lore, but this is Dahlia Gillespie. If you know, you know, but as a quick rundown, this is the head of the Order, Silent Hill's cult, and as you may remember from earlier, their goal is to bring paradise, aka Hell on Earth. She had another plan for this, something I would have to detail in other Silent Hill game reviews, but the backup plan was Walter Sullivan and the 21 Sacraments. So, from a young age, his childhood innocence and longing for his mother was taken advantage of, and he was manipulated by Dahlia Gillespie into thinking that if he performed the ritual, he could wake his mother, aka Room 302, aka Henry's apartment, and be reunited with her at last. Dahlia's goal, of course, was summoning Paradise. Okay, so now this is where we get into a bit of that classic, bizarre, supernatural Silent Hill stuff. Do you remember the name George Roston from earlier? George was Walter Sullivan's tutor overseeing his training, so to speak, on the ritual. During the lessons, George thought it would be a great idea to transfer the spirit of Valtiel into Walter to aid in the completion the sheer violence needed for the ritual. Valtiel is considered an angel by the Order and is sort of a neutral party that acts as he's instructed. The name Valtiel, or is it Valtiel? Whatever. The name Valtiel translates to the attendant of God, so whatever the Order needs, there he goes. But old Georgie boy underestimated the power of Valtiel, and as such became one of Walter's victims, having been bludgeoned by a lead pipe before having his heart removed, and it all happened in this very orphanage. But don't feel bad for old George or his buddy Jimmy Stone. These creeps were not only brainwashing abducted children, but beating them, or worse yet, sending them to the water prison if they were deemed extra disobedient. What's the water prison, you ask? In a second. Firstly, we need to give someone delicious, nutritious chocolate milk.
Oh, chocolate. Oh, chocolate.
You know something? You might think that's a little bit of a silly reaction, but have you ever been really thirsty and gotten a cold chocolate milk? It really is that fucking good. Here we see more of the classic survival horror gameplay, picking up things around the world and finding their uses. It's a tried and true formula, especially for Silent Hill. I knew I had chocolate milk in the refrigerator in room 302, so I excitedly ran back and grabbed it, thrilled as can be when the item is used here for Jasper, and in return, he gives Henry a trowel. You then use that trowel to dig up a key, and now you have access to Wish House. Again, it's the usual gameplay formula you've seen many times before and since, but I can never tire of stringing those little breadcrumbs together before a nice aha moment. Sometimes this game can come off as kind of cryptic and frustrating, I have to admit, and I definitely did the old "where the fuck am I going" run a few times, but then you scour the notes and diary pages and you get a clue that you must have somehow skimmed over before, and the excitement of progress comes rushing back, and Silent Hill 4 has plenty of this gameplay. Alright, so there's a very interesting journal I want to mention to you, and it's a huge clue for other parts of this series, especially Silent Hill 2. On this page, it says, "And God said, offer the blood of the 10 sinners and the white oil." 10 sinners is a reference to Walter's first 10 victims, but the white oil, that's the interesting part. This is the white chrism, the oil that James Sunderland uses in one of the endings you can achieve in attempt to resurrect someone close to him, let's just say. Whether or not he succeeds is left to the player's imagination, but it's not the only character that tried resurrection. If you played Born from a Wish, the excellent additional Silent Hill 2 chapter detailing Maria's moments up to James arriving in Silent Hill, you may remember that Ernest Baldwin, the mysterious reclusive owner of the Baldwin mansion, tasked Maria with retrieving the white chrism in Blue Creek Apartments. He also wished to have the oil so that he may attempt to resurrect someone close to him. Or maybe resurrect himself, never mind. But here in Silent Hill 4, Walter Sullivan needed the oil along with an obsidian goblet to complete the ritual of the Holy Assumption. Suffice it to say, the room has a ton of lore packed into these diary pages and crimson tomes. So if you're like me and you tend to go la 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 when you skip over stuff like this in most games, don't do that in Silent Hill 4. Or do it anyway, I don't really care. Oh, and speaking of Silent Hill 2, does this area look familiar? I can't lie, I kinda marked out pretty hard when I saw Toluca Lake. That old familiar image is iconic, and it gives the player a reminder like, hey, you're next to Silent Hill, pretty cool, right? And it is. There's also little boy Walter Sullivan running around in these other worlds. The theory on little boy Walter is simple enough, that this is a fork of Walter's psyche, a representation of the good and pure part of himself that was destroyed after being brainwashed and abused at Wish House. He does other things later in the game, but for now he's an odd apparition that appears occasionally. In this instance, we see Jasper reference the third revelation before doing his little Tylenol in utero dance. Then Jasper's on fire.
I finally met him! The one the nosy guy talked about! The devil!
You know, for a guy on fire, he seems pretty psyched to have finally met the devil. Walter must have been kinda stoked to get such a willing victim. After everything is done and you're back in room 302, Henry sees Frank Sunderland mulling outside of his room. You'll see yet another fresh handprint for Jasper, and Frank mentions that the sound coming from the room is the same one as back then. Weirdly enough, I couldn't find who voiced Frank Sunderland, but whoever you are, sir, you did a great job at bringing Frank to life. And unlike certain actors that played James Sunderland in a certain HD collection, he's not overly dramatic or theatrical. Seriously, he just sounds like an everyman, but with obvious concern and grief over what he feels is a recurring evil phenomenon. Of course, he did rent the room out after the last one happened, so, you know. He walks away like, aw shit, here we go again. Ha ha, remember that joke too? But seriously, he does walk away like that. And the fact that this is the father of a guy that, well, did what he did, oh man, I love it. I love all these connections. Regardless, we need to discuss the truly sobering terror of the water prison. Also, if you get a second, head over to patreon.com/hypertensionjohnny. Free membership grants you access to music, including the songs that you've heard in this video. Paid membership means that you got this video days ago. Also, you get exclusive access to videos that you will not find on YouTube, ever. Patreon.com/hypertensionjohnny. Go. Okay, thanks. Now we're heading into possibly the darkest area, thematically, of any Silent Hill game, and that's not hyperbole. Back in the bathroom, Henry notes that the hole has increased in size, and that he can hear children's voices coming from it now. In we go. Henry wakes up in the water prison, and he hears a man shouting for help. This level is incredible in so many ways. Now, a prison in a Silent Hill game wasn't new, but this one is unique. This is where the Order would send children from Wish House when they were deemed disobedient. So, yeah, a prison for children, but it gets worse. In this cell, we see blood on the floor and 2 pillories. A pillory was designed for cruel torture, and now your mind starts filling in the events of this cell. Not only is this cruelty on display, but you can see an observational porthole staring down into the room, with a shadow passing by and the sound of shoes presumably doing laps beyond it. So yeah, we're wandering inside of an extreme religious cult's child prison where they would abuse their victims until their behavior was corrected. Isn't religion just the best? It still gets worse. In this cell, we find a note that says, "I'm sick of being watched." The hangman's noose near the bed paints the picture. As we descend further, we see the otherworld influence really start to seep in, and for whatever reason, the rust and filth dripping against the white tiled walls, the grating and the fences, it just does it for me. This is iconic Silent Hill imagery without being a singular image, if that makes sense. Oh, and this is also a good time to mention Akira Yamaoka's ambient sound design. Yamaoka-san has always been a master of warping and distorting samples to create a really drippy, scraping, eerie soundscape for these games. I have to say, the music and sound design in 4 isn't quite as memorable to me overall as the first 2 games, but every now and then they really deliver. The water prison is one of those instances. That low, bellowing groan works perfectly in this revolving asylum of terror. It almost sounds like a foghorn guiding the boats through the fog as they cart children to the prison for their abuse. Then there are the pulsing drums, like an evil heartbeat, as well as the maddening audio, like the clashing of what sounds like monkeys, kids, gunshots, all colliding against one another. This is perfectly creepy audio design, and it goes right along with the best of the series' work. If I haven't made it clear already, I'm a big fan of environmental storytelling. The stuff that ties directly to the plot is good, but I also really like big, mysterious, ominous things too, like this water wheel. Walking into this cavernous room and just observing this giant structure is fascinating to me for whatever reason. It's very impressive in motion after opening the sluice gates too. Things get even more curious with the big transformers and a very large door with a halo of the sun emblazoned onto it. Like, you don't know what's behind there, but you know it's important. And it picks at your curiosity even further when Henry says that he can kinda crack the door just a little bit, but can't go beyond. Other imagery sticks in my mind too, like running the outer perimeter of this prison, which kinda reminded me of Eco a little bit, which is the most secretly brilliant game ever. This is calm and confusing, but it's beautiful all the same, and it left me yearning to know more about this bizarre structure, and to me, that defines the value of a video game world. This is something that Silent Hill was always so good at. The why of where you are is infinitely luring. This feeling only goes further when you're in the center observation deck of this rotten place. Now we're in an area where orderlies could rotate cells. This taps into the surrealistic, bizarre design of the Otherworld, but it also describes some of the most bleak stuff I've ever heard in a Silent Hill game, or any game really. Henry finds a diary that describes the state of the prison and how it's decaying. Many of the cell doors won't open, and observers in this room are watching children simply starve to death. They also can't bathe. The author describes them as smelly little gray lumps. That's grim, dude. Then they discuss how the bodies can be tossed through a chute carved into a cell, just disposing of emaciated dead little ones. Again, isn't religion just grand? The note also mentions an interrogation room behind the kitchen, and then we seg into quite literally the biggest puzzle of the game. Henry has to rotate 3 floors worth of cells to line up certain rooms, which then shines a light all the way down to the kitchen. During this, Henry unlocks the cell holding this fellow. This is Andrew DeSalvo. A little later, you see him kneeling before little boy Walter, clearly terrified and submissive. But why? Well, Al Landy here was not a pleasant man, you see. He was abusive to the kids from the orphanage. DeSalvo wasn't into the religious part of the order. He was just a hired guard, a rent-a-cop to keep the kids in line. When you locate the prisoner's shirt, another puzzle piece that very cleverly crosses over with your apartment later in the game, it's revealed that DeSalvo made at least one kid drink fluid with leeches in it. So, seeing little boy Walter again after so many years was clearly terrifying Andy, as it should be. He's fixing to pay for his sins. Beyond the kitchen is the interrogation room, this chamber of death, and it is freaky, man. Now, remember, this is Walter Sullivan's Otherworld, so who knows? Maybe the real thing wasn't exactly like this, but that's just it. This is what he's projecting from his memory, so maybe the room didn't look like this, but if it was bad enough to be cast out like this from Walter's mind, then it was surely a dark, terrible place. Here we see Andrew DeSalvo, now victim number 18. This won't be the very last time you see Andy, by the way. I want you to remember something. If an obese ghost does Kano cannonballs your way someday, bring a silver bullet and a sword of obedience. You can quote me on that. Henry wakes up in the creatively titled Building World. Yeah, that sounds like great value Legoland, but it's another otherworld, this time Walter's version of Ashfield, but we're not alone.
Ouch! Damn it.
Well, that's a decidedly calm way to fall onto concrete. This is Richard Braintree from room 207. He recognizes Henry as the guy who lives across from him. If you watched this scene alone, you'd think that Richard was just a simple hothead that probably deserves his expected fate at the hands of Walter Sullivan. But this is one of the more interesting side characters if you take your time in the apartment world. Now, Richard is a hothead and a bit of a lunatic, but he's not a cut and dry cardboard bad guy. When Walter was young and sort of lurking around South Ashfield Heights searching for his mother, Richard is said to have been suspicious of and hostile towards him. Walter called Richard the scary guy. And true enough, we later see Richard riding an elevator with little boy Walter, angrily waving his revolver at the kid and accusing him of being like that child he used to see sneaking around the apartments. So, Braintree definitely has an anger problem, but he's not an entirely terrible person either. And this is where we get into the shades of gray. Later in the apartment world, we get to learn a bit about the residents. We see here the apartment of Mike, the pervert of the group. His apartment is loaded with nudie mags. Now, this isn't automatically a bad thing, but he was also stalking Nurse Rachel, and that's a bit of a problem.
How do you like that, you sick little freak? You had it coming to you.
Later in the game, Henry finds a cassette tape labeled Skinned Mike. Again, this is the brilliance of the suggested, implied horror of Silent Hill, especially Part 4. When you listen to the tape, Richard Braintree has just stripped and beaten Stalker Mike. You hear a female voice mention that the clothes would be perfect to wrap his body in. And another voice, the drunken neighbor, wants to keep something for himself. With the name of this tape, your mind will have you believing that this is the most violent, evil stuff happening, when in truth, it's a pervert stalker getting stripped and whipped by Richard. His, quote, skin is just the clothes that they took off of him. But there are other layers to the Skinned Mike cassette tape as well, and things get a little more disturbing. The tenant of room 101, the guy with all the model guns, has an allergy to the local apartment cat. He doesn't have a real gun, but he describes how he used a converted model weapon to just blast away at this poor cat at point-blank range. He describes his joy when the cat fell over dead. After listening back to the Skinned Mike cassette, I think the woman in the tape is not Nurse Rachel, but may actually be the lady from room 102 who owned that cat, and she's using Stalker Mike's jeans to wrap up her cat's body. This is the same cat that then shows up in the fridge of room 302 during a haunting, one of the most disturbing images in the game. It's all so twisted, and yet, when you start linking all of these plot threads together, you can truly appreciate how much effort and care Team Silent put into this game. The bulk of Silent Hill 4 was made in less than a year, and yeah, it was definitely rushed, how could it not be? But man, they clearly put their hearts into this project from early on. And when you're absorbing the characters of South Ashfield Heights, this really becomes evident. But we're still not done. You see, on the cassette, you can hear Richard Braintree yelling at the kid lurking around on the tape. Walter Sullivan, as a child, was there for this beating, and because of the chaos of the moment and the bloody clothing and so forth, he thought Richard Braintree murdered and actually skinned Stalker Mike. This is how his brain recorded this event, hence the name of the cassette tape. It's the big part of why Walter Sullivan targets Richard for the 21 Sacraments. But we're still not done. If you look here, the game doesn't outright tell you what this stuff is, but you can see what could be interpreted as hanging skin all over these shelves. And if you listen closely, you can hear what sounds like sobbing and whimpering, say the cries of a man after being beaten and humiliated. This is genius, and I mean genius video game design. Everyone always talks about Mary in the back seat and Pyramid Head, and rightly so. You know I love that stuff. But it bums me out that the majority sleep on moments like this. It's right up there with the best content that Silent Hill has ever produced. Back in the apartment, you hear Frank Sunderland discussing an umbilical cord that he keeps in his room that's beginning to stink. Team Silent has never been shy about the David Lynch influence in their games. I mean, Lynch Street Line in the Subway world is a pretty dead giveaway, but here the influence is laid on thick. But it's not simply weird dialogue for the sake of weird either. But the sacrifices continue. Henry walks in on Richard being electrocuted as little boy Walter stands silently, indifferent to it. Braintree, before he goes, tells Henry that kid is 11121. Well, we all know that the 1 in the middle is a slash, not an actual 1, so wait. Little boy Walter Sullivan is the 11th victim of Walter Sullivan? Doesn't make sense right now, I know, but I'll explain it shortly. Hang with me, okay? In the meantime, we better check on our neighbors soon. In room 302, we hear knocking at the door. Checking through the peephole, we see a frightening message in blood, stating that we better check on our neighbors soon, in reference to Eileen. During Richard Braintree's murder, little Walter points out of the window as Richard fries behind him. From your apartment window, a neighbor is pointing directly at Eileen's room. Something is clearly wrong. Back through the hole, Henry wakes up in another new otherworld, the apartment world. We see adult Walter knocking patiently on the door of room 303, Eileen's apartment. Once Henry is conscious and moving, he then sees little Walter knocking on room 302, crying out for his mom. And as you approach, he disappears. The importance of these two different door knocking scenes can't be overlooked. Little Walter is banging on room 302, Henry's apartment, as he is convinced that his mom is either there or that the room itself is his mother. Adult Walter wants to get to Eileen because he sees her as the mother reborn, someone who can fulfill the 20th sacrament. Both child and adult Walter are seeking the mother. When Walter was a teenager surviving on the streets, little Eileen stopped to give him her little doll as a way of comforting him. This meant everything to Walter, but unfortunately, no good deed goes unpunished, and Eileen's kind, selfless, and giving nature put her in his sights for the future completion of the 21 Sacraments. Strolling through the apartment world, we come across Walter casually sitting on the stairwell.
I got this from Miss Galvin. A long time ago.
This is such a cool moment because, dude, that's the dude, in real time, just there, not attacking you, not doing anything particularly evil. Watching this playback footage is difficult for me. He offers me the doll.
Here. I'll give it to you.
Don't take it, John. Oh, you dumbass. You don't have to take that thing, by the way. I love seeing Walter at various points throughout the game. It's a shame when a video game shows you a villain early on, they establish the threat and all that, but then you don't really see them again until a big cutscene later on or whatever. Silent Hill 4 keeps Walter ever present in the player's mind without becoming too silly. At one point, Walter stares you down through your peephole, like he's checking on you, making sure you're still there, reminding you that he's watching. Honestly, Silent Hill 4 isn't really scary in the traditional sense, but this is one of the moments that gave me a genuine chill. Oh man, the apartment world is classic, comfy Silent Hill. Fleshy, crusty hellscapes with caged hallways littered with personal effects, locked doors everywhere. Except this time, that's not entirely true. In Frank Sunderland's room, the superintendent, we get the apartment keys. Now, all the rooms, except Eileen's in 303, are open to us. Coming after Silent Hill 3, these keys were a revelation. Then we find a prominent red box. This is the umbilical cord that Frank mentioned earlier, and Henry notes that it stinks. So, why did Frank Sunderland keep an umbilical cord from an abandoned baby? So, I always thought that this was just a creepy, quirky detail because Silent Hill is strange, but I looked into it and it turns out that this is actually a normal Japanese tradition. Evidently, there's a box that hospital staff will keep for a part of the umbilical cord for the family to take home, just like the box that Frank has. Evidently, the Japanese believe that mistreating the cord can bring poor health to the child, and apparently on a kid's birthday, the family might present it to them like, "Hey, remember that day? Haha." Imagine just trying to play with your street sharks and eat some cake with your buddies when your nan comes around with the creepy box. "Look, hero, it's a piece of you." From what I read, sometimes if a child is sick, the family may cut a piece of umbilical cord off and feed it to the kid. Look, with respect to your traditions, guys, antibiotics are a decent alternative, just saying.
Excellent.
Frank's bedside diary tells a brief story about the abandoned baby where the umbilical cord came from. He questions why the parents simply vanished and ponders on the young kid that used to hang around the apartment complex a few years later. But first, another flaw: the goddamn telephone. You see here the main lobby of the complex, and you can hear the phone ringing, yeah? The phone is obviously meant to be an object for the player to find and interact with. But here's the problem. The volume of the ringer never, ever changes. It's always loud. No matter what floor you're on, no matter which direction you face, the ringing never stops. And when you're fighting moth bats and getting hounded by annoying ghosts while frantically running around looking for the phone, it's maddening. And not effective psychological horror maddening, just annoying. I'll just tell you where it's at. It's in room 202. There. Then you pick it up and nobody answers. Wow. So, Silent Hill 4 deserves a remake in the worst way. It really does, as I'm sure things like the ringing phone could be significantly improved. But here we are, the painter's room. This is one of my favorite parts of the game. The artist painted portraits of his neighbors and of himself, and you can go to each room with the superintendent key and see how their living environments reflect the artist's description. I suggest you write yourself a note with a room number and a brief description of the tenant next to it, so that when you go exploring, you can reference each room. It's great. The plump lady, the big family, the drunken guy, the gamer with weightlifting gear in his place, which, by the way, I felt personally attacked by. When you enter Richard Braintree's apartment, Walter is standing at the same window that little boy Walter was standing at during Richard's execution. When you look out that same window, Henry can see Eileen. She's here in the apartment world, and it goes about as well as you'd expect. We enter Eileen's place, and she's been assaulted by Walter, with 20/21 carved onto her back. But she thanks little Walter and asks if he found his mommy. So, in a nutshell, evil-grown Walter attempted to beat Eileen to death, and just before succeeding, little Walter, the happy otherworld offshoot of his personality, stepped in to save her, hence Eileen thanking him. Despite her grievous injuries, she still thinks of the safety of the kid first. Walter wakes up again in room 302 and sees Eileen being taken to St. Jerome's Hospital via ambulance. The hole in the bathroom that you've been using all game is now sealed, and instead, you have to open the new portal in your laundry room. Once the placards are placed, it's off to the hospital we go. The only thing that goes better than apartments in Silent Hill are hospitals and Silent Hill. We already talked about waking up here and seeing Walter creating the patient monster, the big ugly burping nurse thingy, but make no mistake, this isn't the highlight of the hospital world, and a very big gameplay change occurs here that divides the fan base straight down the middle. Henry finds a backlit board with images of Eileen, X-rays, crime scene Polaroids, and so forth. Henry leaves to find her, and this is where we interact with the iconic, in my mind anyway, the iconic hallway of St. Jerome's Hospital. Yes, and the haunted wheelchairs are here. I can't let it go. Putting aside that silliness, the rest of the rooms are great. Mostly. The rainy toadstool room? Okay. The room with more Eileen X-ray images? Okay. Hey, look, I just wanted to be sure. This room with a bed and an IV pole and a wee little sink, nothing amazing. But then we start getting to the good stuff, the surreal and symbolic. The sticky room, which I guess represents the batches that Henry was dropping while peeping on Eileen. I don't know. This is Walter's other world, but Henry's emotions can be manifested here too. Keep that in mind. The next room is decidedly more eerie. A padded room with meat hooks and a smelly body tightly wrapped in a wall-sized sheet. A room with a fenced floor and a bed underneath? Neato. And then I started to think, which room could be a Mary Sunderland reference? Maybe the bed here, under a cage? It's loose. But this room. Dried up, dead flowers with a holy candle set next to them. A certain Mary Sunderland, as you may remember, once rejected Mr. Sunderland's flowers, and she was kept at St. Jerome's before being transferred to Brookhaven Hospital. And oh man, this is me just grasping at that straw as hard as I can, but I choose to believe that this is a Mary Sunderland reference. Then we get to this room. Broken incubators on either side with what I thought were power cords draped about, until Henry realizes, nope, these are abnormally long, girthy umbilical cords. Oh God, that's gross and absolutely in line with the grotesque, disturbing images you've come to these games for. The symbolism is blindingly obvious. Then there's the sterile room. It has a giant ventilation hood and you can hear the sounds of Eileen's shallow breathing. It's pretty cool. The room with a lump on a bed, covered in a taut sheet of skin, impaled with several syringes and pill packets all over the place. Now this one hits close to home. What I see here, symbolically, is the medical system doing what it does best when care and consideration give way to throwing drugs at the problem. The lump here is an actual pincushion, a test bed for doses and brands. Anyway, I know what you came for. Eileen's giant head is iconic. This image, along with the door in apartment 302, is synonymous with Silent Hill 4. It's so cool. I've read that it symbolizes the reversal of roles, as in Henry has peeped on Eileen multiple times from his apartment, but now Eileen is the one doing the watching, hence the eyes staring daggers at you. Oh, and by the way, if you shoot the head with the stun gun, the eyes will light up. She also moans. Some speculate that it could be cries of pain, but guys, you might be doing it wrong, I'm just saying. There are some other rooms, like the hanging sheet and the falling spikes, but let's skip a bit, brother. We find the lady herself. Eileen is in rough shape, and as much as I might give out about the escort stuff, scenes like this are no joke. Parallels could be made about the trauma a woman may experience following a battering by a man. For the record, violence against anyone is unacceptable, regardless of D&Bs or Ts and a V. Let's not forget that. Eileen wakes up screaming and clutching the IV pole, the knife carving on her back still fresh. Unfortunately, the moment is kind of undone by Henry. The Henster here blandly recounts his experience up to this point.
There was this strange hole in my room. I saw people getting killed. All these weird other worlds.
Haha, he said the thing. Eileen is skeptical, but she comes around when Henry mentions little Walter being there. Hey, so while we're here, can we take a moment to appreciate Eileen Galvin real quick? I've plugged in a few highlights from her along the way, but to recap, she gave a homeless, frightened Walter her doll when she was just 5. She sweeps up the hallways of South Ashfield Heights, and let me tell you, as someone who grew up in apartment complexes, a neighbor like that is invaluable. She was beaten up, nearly to death, and made sure that the kid that saved her was okay first. When she finds out who little Walter really is and what he suffered through, she runs off on her own to go help him. And if you give her a weapon, she'll fight monsters with you. Eileen's no punk bitch, dude. She's ride or die. But now, we switch to the most contentious part of Silent Hill 4.
Okay. Take me with you.
Let's not beat around the bush here. The second half, and it's really more like the remaining 30%, to be fair, is mostly an escort quest with Eileen in tow. The trick, if you will, is that Eileen is slowly being possessed and infected by Walter Sullivan from this point on. Eileen, like Maria in Silent Hill 2, can take damage and get scared, affecting the ending that you get. However, unlike Maria, Eileen's damage and emotional state will affect the moment-to-moment gameplay and cutscenes. For my playthrough here, I kept Eileen very healthy throughout, so you can't tell by my footage, but the more possessed she becomes, the more she'll begin to break down. This cutscene shows her deep in the throes of possession. Her skin is covered in markings, and she'll suffer from nervous breakdowns. If it gets bad enough, she'll start jabbering to herself during gameplay, speaking in tongues or talking like a little toddler. If this stuff happens, you can supposedly heal her a little bit by laying down candles nearby, but it's debated as to whether or not this actually matters in the final battle. So I played pretty well on this run, but I wasn't trying particularly hard to get a good ending or anything like that. I guess my point is that it's not too much of a chore to keep her safe, and I feel like you'd either have to be pretty bad at this game or attempting to see the possession effect by playing poorly on purpose. I don't really understand why people complain about the protection stuff with Eileen. That said, The pace of Silent Hill 4 does drag in the second half when you have to escort Eileen. Again, the character is great. From a design perspective, the possession stuff is exceptional and unique. She's much more of a protagonist than Henry, but mechanically, playing the actual video game itself, the escort stuff sucks, man. Firstly, yes, she gets a weapon. Thematically, great. Functionally, not worth it. She'll stop to fight enemies constantly. Again, thanks and all, but come on, we gotta go. Also, her weapon takes up another slot in your inventory. Boo! Boo! But really, it just sucks to have to slow way down or stop altogether to have Eileen catch up to you, especially when her model clips into the environment or gets stuck on a batch of enemies or whatever. It's not super difficult, and I never lost my temper or whatever. It just slows the game way, way down. Having to run then stop, run then stop. And this is compounded significantly by the fact that after the hospital world, you basically just play the same levels over again. This may be one of the bigger indicators that the game was made in a hurry. I will say, this didn't necessarily ruin the game for me per se, but it is notable and it's kinda disappointing, especially with levels like the subway world, which was painful enough when you're alone or with Cynthia. I really am not a big fan of the subway world, but it's significantly worse trying to weave through train cars and dodge ghosts when Eileen is meandering around, getting left behind as ghosts are just careening towards you while you wait for her to catch up. I'm not saying that Eileen should have been Duke Nukem, Billy Badass over there, but a simple hand-holding mechanic would have been magical, something to help lead her through those tight spaces. Think Eco and Yorda. Another argument for a remake. Please? Now, the thing I don't read much about when fans discuss the escort sections of the game are the good things that Eileen adds by being around. In the initial forest world, Henry can't decipher the red writing on various stones, but when you go back, because of Eileen's possession, she can read these inscriptions, and it really adds a tremendous amount of insight into Walter's character. Another interesting thing, Eileen doesn't see the halo of the sun or the holes in the walls. She mentions that Henry just disappears all of a sudden. She also doesn't notice her own big-ass head when you're in the hospital world. I talked about this with my Silent Hill 2 review, how Laura, the little girl, doesn't see the awful stuff that James is going through, how the other worlds can cross over a little, but everyone experiences their own version of this nightmare. Okay, so you go back through each world with Eileen. You fight some monsters and complete some puzzles, like putting a stuffed cat in a pet store cage or a cue ball back on the pool table in the bar. You'll find and assemble pieces of a mannequin and get a cool bit of spooky body horror when you do. Oh, and fun fact, some have speculated that the spirit possessing this mannequin is that of George Roston, the dude that tutored Walter on the 21 Sacraments and transferred Valtiel into Walter like a dummy. Oh well, I have no sympathy for child abusers. Enjoy your mannequin prison, bitch. I don't think it would be necessary to break down every single beat of the repeat levels with Eileen, but we should talk about the One Truth boss. This is the boss before the finale, and it looks so cool. The trick is to find the real wall man that takes damage. Henry has to sort the lies from the truth, as it were. The reason the twin victim enemy whispers receiver at Henry is because his ultimate purpose is to be the receiver of wisdom, the final sacrament, victim 21. I reckon his ability to sort the truth from lies is his final test here, hence the name of the boss. I've also read the theory that this boss could represent the nonsense and lies that the Order spreads, which is another sound theory and it's just as valid. Regardless of this, I just love the setting of this fight. The giant, grand, skin-like theater curtain backdrop, the massive pit in the center of the room, and the gorgeous beaming chandelier. It looks so cool, and although it is kinda lame that the boss is just a bigger version of an enemy you've seen before, the scale and presentation is lovely. But eventually, Henry slays the beast, and it's time to enter the home stretch. Whew, this was a big one. But I think it's time to kind of wrap it up and discuss the why. Why did Walter Sullivan end up with the Order? Why does Frank Sunderland have his umbilical cord? Why is Silent Hill 4 the saddest game I've ever played? Funny enough, it has nothing to do with monsters. It has nothing to do with cults or ghosts or the power of Silent Hill or any of that. It all comes down to one word. This part hits hard. In the apartment world, late game, Henry hears a little boy crying out for his father with quite possibly the saddest song I've ever heard playing under it. The song is called Resting Comfortably. I had said that the sound design overall isn't as memorable to me as Silent Hill 1 or 2, and that may be true, but this song, it does what video game music should do, in my opinion, and that's to enhance the mood of whatever scene the player is in. In that regard, Resting Comfortably is a titan in this medium. So this is the voice of little Walter Sullivan when he would come back to South Ashfield Heights as a boy, searching for his family. It hits differently because the whole focus up to this point has been mother, mother, mother. That's the recurring theme. But here, he just wants to see his dad. He can't find him, he can't see his face, and nobody's helping him. At this point, Frank Sunderland has chains outside his room, like the ones that Henry had inside of room 302, and the puzzle is solved by seeking out chained up bodies that look like Walter and setting them free. Thankfully, they're all on the first floor, by the way. But when you knock one down, you get a little dialogue. And then you start to piece together what really happened.
Little crybaby. Hurry up. Get back. Anyway, let's get out of here. I can't stand it anymore.
Walter Sullivan was abandoned as a baby. The voices you just heard were Walter's parents. They couldn't be bothered to do the right thing and raise their child, so they just dipped. Now, how they broke their lease agreement, whatever. Then Walter opens the umbilical cord box and he sees a vision. Henry sees the flashing image of Walter's parents as they were leaving for good. Then he sees this one. This is the single saddest image I've ever seen in a video game. Again, it's not a monster, it's not a ghost, it's not Pyramid Head or whatever. It's just a little baby left on the floor of an apartment crying out for help. I've seen this image on and off during this script writing, and it nearly brings me to tears every time. The cruelest force in the world is truly negligence. So, even though Walter Sullivan is evil and he has done horrific things, no question, he's a piece of shit, but he's not just a black and white bad guy that's simply crazy or whatever. There are levels to this. He was once someone's baby, left alone, scared and cold on a floor in some dump of an apartment. Then he gets recruited into the Order, is brainwashed and horribly abused, and, lest we forget, implanted with the spirit of a demon. You know, that old gag. Yeah, the Order calls Valtiel an angel, but those dummies label everything ass backwards because, well, they're religious fanatics, and people like that are always f***ed in the head. It gets slightly more confusing. Hold on.
Are you Walter Sullivan?
Henry and Eileen meet little Walter in the forest world revisited. He tells them that everyone calls him Walter, but nobody would know his true name if he ever had one. He talks about the people that tried to stop him from rejoining his mother. I've told you the purpose of the 21 sacraments, right? The order wants paradise, aka hell on earth, but Walter truly believes that if he completes the ritual, he'll be reunited with his mother. Later, Henry gets another red letter in his apartment, but not before you see a seriously creepy image of dead Henry Townsend. Hope you get the good ending. Haha. Anyway, this is Walter's sort of hit list, if you will, listing his first 10 victims that made up the ritual of the Holy Assumption. Then the remaining victims, both departed and planned, with Henry Townsend as the final. But wait, look at victim number 11. Yeah, Walter Sullivan. Huh? So what? He offed himself or... Yep. It's all laid out in this book, Under the Wish House Orphanage. I'll simplify it, okay? The first sign basically tells Walter to gather the blood of the 10 sinners. That's why he took the hearts out of his first 10 victims. It says he needs the white oil. Remember the white chrism that we talked about earlier? And the black cup, the obsidian goblet. The second sign tells Walter, or whomever, I'm just saying Walter to keep it easy. It says to then offer these items, okay? 10 hearts, white oil, black cup, offer it. And then it says, be then released from the bonds of flesh. Basically, I have to use this modern term, I guess. You unalive yourself, and then your spirit is set free. To gird thyself with despair for the giver of wisdom. Basically, now that you're a spirit, go haunt room 302 and make Joseph Schreiber's life suck. Joseph Schreiber is known as the giver of wisdom, which is why he wrote all of those red letters for the next tenant of room 302 after he was gone, aka Henry Townsend, the receiver of that wisdom. Joseph giveth wisdom, Henry taketh wisdom. Tracking? The third sign mentions being under the watchful eye of the demon, Valtiel, wandering around taking out 10 more people that meet these requirements, chaos, temptation, etc., etc. The last sign, in a nutshell, tells Walter to take out the Mother Reborn, Eileen, and the receiver of wisdom, Henry, and the mother shall be reborn, and the nation of sin shall be redeemed. This kind of stuff, these letters, is so cool to me, man. Like, there it is, in black and white, well, red and brown, the tenets that Walter was brainwashed on and abused into following. If it's not all clear though, you meet the ghost of Joseph Schreiber himself in room 302 of the past. You find his typewriter and everything, it's great. I love this scene so much. It's just so well organized. It's well scored and well written. I love the black and white apartment, and Joseph's ghostly voice hits the sweet spot between eerie and comforting. It could have been corny and lame, but they nailed it.
Let me tell you something about him, Walter Sullivan. When he was a little boy, he began to believe that my apartment was actually his birth mother.
But okay, if the Walter floating around is a spirit and little boy Walter is a fork of that spirit, where is the actual Walter Sullivan? Well, he's been closer than you realized this whole time. With the pickaxe of hope, Henry now creates his opening in room 302. He walks through into a secret storage room and is overwhelmed by the stench. Guess who's here? Yep, that's Walter Sullivan, the real Walter Sullivan, posed on a cross that is a doornail. If you look, you'll notice longer hair than the Walter you've been seeing. So the spirit Walter is sort of an idealized version he's projecting when he was in his prime days of being who he was, throwing footballs right over them mountains. Also, the refrigerator behind him. Some have said that these are chemicals meant to ward off the stench of his body. Maybe, except it says that they're bags of blood, and I think that these are the 10 hearts and or bags of blood of his first 10 victims. And if you look at his feet, sure enough, 11 out of 21 carved. So, evil spirit Walter, hang in there. The spirit Walter took the body and mounted it in this secret room before carrying out the remaining hits of the 21 sacraments. But then a big moment happens, and guys, I remember being so thrilled the first time I saw this. Yeah, baby, it's time to break free from room 302. Now, this is a big moment, symbolically speaking. Back to the topic of agoraphobia and fear of the outside world, this feels like Henry finally overcoming those fears and facing them head on. He even uses an item called the Keys of Liberation. Of course, if this is the reality that's waiting for us, then I don't know, maybe it justifies being antisocial, but whatever, the point stands. Walter locked you in here to maintain the order of the sacraments, and he messed with you the whole time, watching you like a lab rat. Now that you've discovered everything, and all that's left is you and Eileen, it's time to finish this. We then reunite with Eileen, and the escort mission resumes. Yeah, things like getting cornered by a bunch of burping nurses is still pretty aggravating. Fighting the wonky-ass camera feels sloppy, especially if you're trying to protect Eileen. Come on, Eileen. Okay, sorry, I had to get one of those in. Plus, can we talk about Walter stalking you and shooting at you like Dante? It's kind of cool in the forest world early on. You're like, whoa, there's Walter, neato. But in these close quarters of the apartments, it's just kind of annoying. Not deal breaking, it's just like, okay, I get it, ooh, evil spirit man. Just hang on a sec there, partner. So, despite her sympathy for his upbringing, Eileen determines that it's up to them. This surrogate mom and dad tag team duo sets off to put an end to the ritual once and for all. Henry enters the secret room and Walter's body is gone. No other choice, it's time to pull a Silent Hill and jump through a big hole. Oh, and look to the left. You can see the white chrism and the obsidian goblet on the table. Smashing. At first, Henry ends up in this red womb-like area with what I assume are the memories or spirits of some of Walter's victims. It's just a guess, I'm not certain. Then we see the death machine, just in case you were wondering if Team Silent ever watched Event Horizon. Oh, and fun fact, this machine is on the cover of the album. Sweet. But here we are, the final boss. Walter tells his younger self that it's almost time to go, and then he tells Henry what I've already told you, that he's the last victim, the receiver of wisdom. Just then, a possessed Eileen Galvin begins marching towards the machine, and it's time to kick ass. Oh, and you might be wondering, who or what is that? That's true Walter. So, in a nutshell, Walter's real body got dragged into the other world, and this is the monster that got spit back. The trick is to give the true Walter his umbilical cord back, causing the creature to shriek in pain and release the spears of the Holy Mother that are impaled into each victim in the arena. You take those spears and then you stick them into true Walter, which then opens up the evil, ghostly Walter to damage. This part kind of sucks. The somewhat clunky, well not somewhat, the clunky third-person combat does not translate well to faster action gameplay. And there are times when I was getting pretty poopy when fighting El Walt here. Also, it just looks silly trading bullets at point-blank range with this guy. Again, I say, this is another amazing concept with dated mechanics. Just think of what could be done with a remake in the hands of a competent team. Also, the entire time you're fighting, Eileen is marching towards the machine, and if she was heavily possessed before this fight, she marches even faster. Light a candle to slow her down, or just be fast, I guess. Good luck. But at last, the final blow is struck, and down goes Walter Sullivan. Alright, so you might notice a bizarre glitch with my final cutscene, and yeah, god damn it. So I don't know. The GOG version of Silent Hill 4, which is fully restored, go to GOG, it's great. Buy this version, support GOG for all of their hard work. I love that site, man. But for whatever reason, my last cutscene just shat the bed, and I don't know why. I searched far, wide, and deep for a solution, but to no avail. Is it because I run AMD? No clue. Is it the frame rate? Well, doubtful, because I set Radeon Chill to max out at 60 FPS, and most of the other cutscenes worked flawlessly. So I got the mother ending, but you wouldn't know by looking here, so here's a bit of cleaner footage. Walter lies on the ground, looking up at the light beaming down, and simply utters, "Mom." And as simple as it is, the choice to use "Mom" was perfect. Mother is a little too theatrical, a little too Norman Bates, and Mommy would have just sounded silly. Little Walter knocks at room 302 until he finally falls over and disappears before the door creaks open. Henry finally walks out of South Ashfield Heights. It's a beautiful sunny morning. The day after, Henry brings Eileen flowers at St. Jerome's Hospital, and she's looking well. She smiles and says that she can go back to South Ashfield Heights now. Then we cut to room 302, fully infected and rotting because I didn't clear enough hauntings. Okay, so Eileen and Henry went through all of that crap and just, guess we'll move back. Oh, and by the way, Eileen is in St. Jerome's Hospital because she was there the entire time. Henry escaping with her was all otherworld stuff. It's the same reason you can see Richard Braintree sleeping earlier in the game when he's in the building world. But I do wonder, mother ending. Is there a little clue in that title, perhaps? Did Eileen actually end up becoming the Mother Reborn after all, and she wants to go back to room 302? Did her possession by Walter take hold after all? It makes you think. This is a great place to talk about those other endings too. So, they didn't have time to incorporate the silly UFO ending like they wanted, but Team Silent put together some bangers. The escape ending is identical to the mother ending, except that Eileen says they'll have to find a new place to live. Henry, now a full-fledged hero, says nothing. He just nods in autism. Happy ending, roll credits. Ooh, you weren't nice to Eileen. Defeating Walter is the same. After little Walter disappears, Henry wakes up in room 302 to a radio broadcast that explains that 5 bodies were discovered near the woods of Silent Hill. One of the victims was Eileen Galvin, who perished at St. Jerome's. Henry does his best impression of sadness.
Eileen.
The bad ending is unquestionably the best ending. Walter falls, and Henry experiences significant head pain. Dissolve to room 302, where we see little Walter Sullivan happily laying on the couch. He says that he's finally home, and he won't ever be apart from his mom again. The radio broadcast plays, detailing the bodies, including Eileen Galvin, only now there's a final body discovered in South Ashfield Heights apartments. Room 302, Henry Townsend. Additionally, 5 police officers were found deceased at the apartments, along with Frank Sunderland. Hey, now Frank can join his son. The remaining tenants of South Ashfield Heights are having severe chest pain. This incident is compared to the one that occurred in Silent Hill years ago. All this while we see adult Walter standing in room 302. He did it. The 21 sacraments have been completed. Paradise has come. The Order wins. It's clearly not the happy ending, but man, this is such a cool horror game finale. The big evil finally comes out on top, courtesy of Walter Sullivan. So, normally this is where I talk about sales figures and Metacritic scores and so forth, but Silent Hill 4's legacy is much more than that. This is the very last true Silent Hill game. Now, I have a soft spot for several of the Western-made games, and I'll talk about them someday. I absolutely adored the Silent Hill 2 remake. I mean, I really love that remake. And as of this writing, what I've played of Silent Hill F feels like a solid return to form for this series. I'm hoping we can get some more original games and can all live happily ever after, but it'll never be the Team Silent that I grew up with. I'm not gatekeeping. The original games were far from perfect, and it doesn't mean that future Silent Hill titles can't be better than the original quadrilogy. They absolutely could be, and I hope they are. Despite the dreadful state of the games industry at the moment, I hold out hope for my favorite hobby, specifically my favorite genre, horror. Okay, more to the point, how does Silent Hill 4 compare to the original 3? Well, you see, I don't really think of those games as one being better than the other one necessarily. Each of them has its own merits, flaws, and takeaways. But does Part 4 deserve to stand shoulder to shoulder with the first 3? Well, I have a feeling that the people that don't think so probably got filtered and quit. And I understand. The ghost thing kinda sucked. The escort stuff kinda sucked. The repeat levels were a little disappointing, and the protagonist is kind of a loaf of bread. But the story of Walter Sullivan, the incorporation of the Order, Frank Sunderland, the umbilical cord, the 21 Sacraments, the apartment world, the water prison, and Eileen Galvin's big moaning noodle in St. Jerome's Hospital. There are many, many beautiful things about Silent Hill 4, and you owe it to yourself to play it if you like this series. I will admit though, I am a bit biased. Silent Hill 4 also happens to be a game I relate to quite a bit, unfortunately. I'm not just talking about the mommy issues. In your apartment, you get a red diary page slipped under the door. In it, Joseph Schreiber details what he's learned about Walter so far. As the years went on, Walter tried being normal, but his bitterness towards humanity and growing resentment towards the outside world was becoming worse and worse. You know what my birthday is? It's July 29th. No, I'm not possessed by a demon.
Isn't that right, Johnny?